So to introduce my topic, I always like starting with this quote: drink plenty of water, have lots of sunshine, because basically we are a houseplant with complicated emotions. Yes, I think sometimes that's the truth. And I'm going to talk today about managing our emotions, first by understanding what emotions are. I want to explore what it really means to give yourself permission to fully feel and why that's going to be beneficial to our well-being. And I also want to pass on some valuable tools to help manage your emotions. So, what are emotions? Well, literally, emotion is energy in motion. Emotions give us real-time information, basically about what's going on for us at any particular moment. In fact, the function of an emotion is actually to get our attention. And I often use, most my simplistic example when I want to discuss emotions is to talk about the movie Inside Out. And if you haven't watched that movie, I thoroughly recommend it. It's a gorgeous movie. It's basically, the whole film takes place in the head of this 11-year-old girl called Riley. And she has all these emotions, actually the 5 main emotions we have, which is joy, sadness, anger, fear and disgust. And they're all talking to her and they're wanting to help her navigate her world. But the film also has a lot of deep things to pass on, just about the importance of allowing ourselves to feel all the emotions. And spoiler alert here, I'll admit, in the movie at one stage, Riley has decided that life's just got too hard for her and she's going to leave home. She's just so full of anger and fear. But when she adds sadness, the emotion of sadness, to how she's feeling, it actually brings a balance to the decision she then makes, which is to go back to her parents and talk about all the things that have been bothering her. And it's just this most beautiful, poignant plot twist where Joy, who just wants everything to be happy, 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 learns that as much as she wants to put sadness in the circle, say, you stay there, when she realised the importance of sadness and how when joy and sadness work together in Riley's life, there's such a balance of healthy well-being. And research shows us that it's actually healthy to have both positive and negative emotions at the same time. One of my favourite Bible verses is from Psalm 139, where the verse says, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And let's face it, our bodies are like barometers for emotions, but we all have the ability to manage the flow of all the different feelings that we are having at different times. And sometimes we feel like we're having a lot of those feelings all at once. And I want to talk about the complex nervous system that our bodies are built with. And we have our sympathetic nervous system. This is our fight and flight response. And it's basically, if there's any perceived danger, you look behind and there's a wild animal chasing you, all the energy will go down to your legs and you will run like you have never run before, because that's what our body is designed to do if there's danger. But what happens is when the animal's gone, hopefully you get away, it's then important to then have the balance of the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest, the digest, the bringing the body back into a state of balance. We've had that accelerator happening, we've got out of that danger, let's put the brakes on. And unfortunately what happens is often when we've got a lot of perceived stress in our life and real stress, we become stuck in this heightened sympathetic part of the nervous system, and we're always having our body on alert. And that was my story. And literally I ended up, the wake-up call for me was that being diagnosed by a nursing friend with a suspected heart attack, and literally within an hour of having this beautiful lunch with friends and family, I'm in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. And thankfully, my heart was fine. But a very perceptive nurse asked me, Trish, have you been experiencing any stress lately? And that was an opportunity for me to actually acknowledge that I had hit emotional overwhelm. Within a few years, both my parents had died, my daughters had grown up and left home, and I had just recently ended a teaching career of 35 years to work with my husband in a business. And sadly, within a short period of time, marriage ended. And my body was saying, enough's enough. My adrenals were so fatigued by the constant at this level of trying to do what's right, trying to please everyone, that I hadn't realized I needed to bring back the parasympathetic, the rest and digest. So it was a really important time for me to take all that information that I was now aware of. My body was crying out for help, and I did a lot of research, and I won't go into much of it now, except I learned so much about the nervous system. And in particular, I learned about the vagus nerve, which is one of the cranial nerves, and it goes from the brain down to the abdominal area. And it's literally the queen of the parasympathetic nervous system. And it's our opportunity, if we can keep stimulating that nerve, it will bring down that continual increase of stress, anxiety that I was feeling. And there's such beautiful, easy ways to implement that. One is just breathing, mindfulness, being aware of what's happening with our breath. Another one is just learning to use our voice to sing, to hum, to chant. And, I'm aware of that lovely song, I whistle a happy tune, and every single time the happiness in the tune convinces me that I'm not afraid. So Anna was right in The King and I. We can convince ourselves that we don't have to live in fear, that we don't have to be continually stressed, but we also have to understand what that emotion is. And I want to add here that it's important to realise that we're all going to experience difficult emotions, but if we can mindfully embrace them, rather than try and squash them, deny them, avoid them, because they're not going to go away. And believe me, I know from my own experience, they will come back, they will manifest in some symptom in our body. But if we can just listen to them, don't judge them, don't see them as right or wrong, but just allow them to come, just allow like a guest into our home and learn from them. And then we can let the flow of them move through our body and bring balance to mind, body and soul again, because that's when the empowering happens for us. So looking at some tools so we can actually shift those emotions from chaos to calm, I used my 3Cs process, and it's basically curiosity, compassionate attention, and connection. And if some of you have ever just researched the psychologist Susan David, you'll notice she also uses the C's in her work, and I have a little bit of a different concept to it, but I love what she's got to bring, and I've learned so much from her. So for me, the curiosity is bringing in it's almost like what Susan David talks about, courage. It's having the courage to be curious about what's happening, to just explore, to know and understand, and then show compassion. Compassionate attention will stimulate that vagus nerve. It will bring the parasympathetic side of us into a lovely, healthy balance. And have compassion about what's happening for you. This is what I really understood about learning to fully feel. And, there were times when I had to acknowledge I was feeling so much hurt. I was feeling so much sadness. And I sometimes would have a temper tantrum in the privacy of my own home. But I just needed to let that anger come through about all that seemed so unfair that had happened to me. Sometimes I literally curled up like in a fetal position and wailed. And I needed to connect with that real sadness because that's who I am. Sometimes I would just scream in the car and just let it all out. Sometimes I would use swear words that my poor mum would turn over in her grave as she hurt me. But I needed to allow all those emotions to be felt, because for too long I had put on this mask and people say, "How are you, Trish?" "Oh, I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. Inside, I was grieving losses that had happened. I was grieving all the changes that had caused this domino effect that was so impacting all aspects of my life. And once I acknowledged and I gave myself permission to feel all those difficult emotions and then embrace them and let them go. And do what you need to help you release them. Sometimes I would journal them. I had some wonderful mentors and counsellors and coaches I worked with, and now I have the privilege of working with others as they are navigating these difficult times. And I think that the important thing is that I've mentioned curiosity, compassion, connection. Connection is so important. It's almost like you're connecting the dots of what's happening in your body, your soul, your mind. My body was telling me it wasn't happy. I had to connect with the emotions and let them be felt and be heard, and then I could let them go. And then I had to address my thinking. This is what we use in NLP a lot. We call it reframing the situation. I had to change some of the thinking, the stories in my head. So I was becoming so much more in balance, and I could feel the healing mind, body, soul, and spirit. And that took a lot of courage. And that's where I think Susan David comes into it. And I want to quote some of her work because I can't take credit for this, because I think she explains this so superbly. She says, our thoughts don't own our actions. Our emotions don't own our actions. We own our actions and how we respond to our thoughts and emotions. And a good question to ask yourself, and this is what I've learned to do as well, is I'm just bringing all that chaos down to a calm. And I know I'm work in progress because I'm learning to be gentle and compassionate. But I always ask myself the question, is this response that I'm now going to make to this person, is it going to help me be a better parent, a better partner, a better friend? Is it going to bring me closer to being the person I want to be? Because I think the most important and significant thing I've learned about emotions, they tell us about what's happening. Remember, they're just data, but they don't own us. We own them. But we can also decide what action is going to bring us closer to our values that will allow us to be the person we want to be the person that we will celebrate, that it's a process, it's always going to be a journey. And to me, it's managing emotions, it's not controlling them, because managing feels so much more achievable for me. And I've learned in my own unraveling when all those identities were just stripped from me and all the emotions became so overwhelming, I've learned that I can manage, I can be in control of the moment because that is available to all of us as we learn to fully feel, to fully heal.